Hello and welcome to Comic Book Junkies. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joe.
And today we're going to touch on a few different topics, namely The Boys TV show coming back for another season, Shazam, The Monster Society by Jeff Smith, and lastly we'll be touching on a little bit of the Black Adam movie rumors as well as Shazam 2 speculation. We're going to start off by talking about The Boys. So, what do you think?
So I was really interested in the first season, so I'm definitely interested in the second season, especially now that a trailer has come out for it. So I'm not going to pretend that I was always a fan of The Boys. I have always been a fan of Garth Ennis. He wrote Preacher a long time ago, and he also wrote the comic book series The Boys back in 2006. So it has that same kind of connotation that Preacher did, but he released it through Amazon or made a deal with Amazon in 2019 to bring it to television. The new season should air September 4th of this year, and the trailer is available to watch, so I definitely recommend watching it on your own. What I really like about the series in particular is that it's very Watchmen-esque. It's about a group of citizens that become vigilantes, and their goal is to fight and kill the superheroes of their universe. Unlike Watchmen, who was based off of the Charlton characters, they're more closely resembling the Justice League. So their version of Superman is called Homelander. Their version of Aquaman is called the Deep. It's just basically a criticism on how these superheroes are employed by the government, and so they abuse their powers and kind of come off as corrupt celebrities. So the trailer itself, I didn't feel was that strong, but the trailer for the first season wasn't very strong either. It's more about actually watching the series and viewing it that way that you'll get a better idea of how they portray the boys. I'm definitely looking forward to it. How about yourself?
Yeah, dude. So I definitely did not watch the first season just because I don't have an Amazon Prime account. I do want to see it though because I do love Garth Ennis's work. I do love Preacher. I did watch that on AMC. I wish they would have been able to take the liberties that I hear they can take with The Boys. Unfortunately, AMC doesn't have the same capability as a streaming service. And that was still kind of pushing some envelopes, and it was pretty funny. So I can just imagine what they can do with the source material for The Boys. I am loosely familiar. I haven't read the entirety of the story. I haven't been able to watch the show, but I have heard great things from people who love superhero comics and from people who don't even know what The Boys are. So I hear it's a good watch. I will hopefully try and catch up eventually because I do have some interest in it, but unfortunately I can't really speak much further to that.
Season 3 has already been approved, I think, on behalf of how many views the first season got, and the first season left you on a really big cliffhanger, so that is another reason to visit season 2, not even if you watch it all the way through, but just kind of see how they resolve that last episode of the series. Outside of that, that's all I really got to go on. Just know that it's CBJ approved on my part.
Word dog. So now that we're moving past that because I don't know much about it, we're going to talk about what I do know. Shazam and the Monster Society, written by Jeff Smith. So if you don't know Jeff Smith, he created the popular series Bone back in the 90s, 2000s. That was a long-running story that a lot of people did love, both kids and adults alike. So that is written and drawn by him. But to give you some backstory on Shazam, aka the original Captain Marvel, he is a superhero that first appeared in the Golden Age of comics way back in Wiz Comics 2, published by Fawcett Comics back in 1940 by C.C. Beck and Bill Parker. So the character went on to have multiple offshoot series, Wiz Comics being his main series. He had Captain Marvel Adventures, the Marvel Family, all kinds of different characters that spun off, such as Mary Marvel, Uncle Marvel, and Captain Marvel Jr. In his peak, he even outsold Superman at the height of his popularity until, the law came into effect and DC sued the crap out of him. That ceased publications of all of his series back in the 50s. He wasn't published again until DC acquired him in the 70s. And even then, he was on his own Earth, Earth S, until Crisis, when he was unified in the main universe. So that's just a little backstory on his publication history. If you want to know what Shazam stands for, which is what he goes by currently, it's an abbreviation for where he derives his powers. So it starts with Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury. And they each describe which power he pulls from which god or deity, and that pretty much embodies who the character is. And now that I've given you a little bit of a backstory on him, Joe, what do you think of this book?
Before you get into actually reading the comic book series, if you do yourself, Alex Ross is a very famous artist in the comic book world, and he's got a little bit of an introduction for the character. So even before you read the story, this is what he has to say about it. He says, says charm. That's a quality that few comics deliver these days. Even though the root of comic books comes mostly from entertaining youth, the medium has evolved to the point of not wanting to recognize its origins. For the mostly adult audience that reads comics, we still want these playful representations of ideals of youth, but we rarely come to terms why, and the answer is charm. The subliminal quality of being charming is something that we all respond to no matter what age, and superheroes embody that quality like no other. And then after that, he goes into a little bit of tidbit about the background of the guy who actually writes this run on the comic book, a little bit of background on the character Shazam. His introduction's a few pages, so I'm not going to quote the whole thing, but I thought that was a really cool way of summing up Shazam's place in comic books. Like Berger said, he was outselling Superman back in the day, and they even pushed to make a movie about Shazam pretty early on for him not being a character that's really represented the way he should nowadays. But to answer your question, it was an amazing read. Chapter 1, I guess we'll start there, is basically like a little introduction to his character. So this is a great character study for him too, for the people that don't know anything about Shazam. And this was a really cool way to get me introduced to not only his villains, but the way Billy Batson acquired his set of skills, his superpowers, and the type of environment that he lived in. So the first few panels, he's kind of living in a demolished home. There's like bugs crawling around there, and there's a homeless guy that breaks in first thing. Legreen, yeah, and he says, "Come on, let me in. I just need a little cash. I know you got some." And it's just like, how does he know a little kid has money? Basically, if you want to live on his streets, you got to live by his rules. And so he like kicks him in the head and steals all of his money. Definitely like a gritty story, but the way that they do the art in this story is kind of a little more youthful. So like a mature tone in the writing, but like a youthful representation in art. So I thought it created like a really cool balance there.
Going off of what you said first is the introduction to how he gets his powers, kind of setting up his world and how he fits in it. It takes bits and pieces of his Golden Age origins. So it's pretty actually faithful, but there's some minor tweaks and bends along the way. Generally, Billy's not in a decrepit, cockroach-ridden room getting stomped by junkies, but it's kind of close. I mean, he is an orphan. He's always been an orphan, but he's always been a responsible kid who's always had a heart of gold. And we see that. He's hanging out with Talkie, just hanging out, the old dude sitting by the fire, just hanging out with the homeless. He's just trying to chill, just live. There's always something trying to keep him down, but because he always has that outlook on life, he finds a way to persevere, and he's a great character. It shows why he's pure of heart. It shows why he was chosen as a champion. So moving past him getting stomped on by junkies, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to where he's chilling with Talkie, and he's just hanging out, and he sees a silhouette standing in the distance, and he's like, "Bro, I think that's my dad." That's a dude in a trench coat and a hat. You can't see his face or nothing, but he's like, "That's my dad." Gonna follow him. Goes down into a subway, just like in the Golden Age, just follows a random dude down into a subway. He's like, "What the hell's going on?" Random train pops up. That train, though, that was big pimpin', wasn't it? That shit was sweet.
Too.
Yeah, and then his ass, he just like wanders onto it, and he just stands there. He's scared. He's trying to talk to the silhouette. It's like, if that's your dad, aren't you gonna ask him something? He gets the cold shoulder from him, and then he's just like, "Get off the train." And he does. There he is, Rock of Eternity, just like the Golden Age. So I do like, if you're not familiar with his original stories back in the 40s, this gives you kind of a updated, slightly more modern take on how he was introduced back in the day.
Yeah, and it is faithful to your point. As soon as he gets off that subway train, he's in this place, and it's got 7 different statues, and they have a lot of like the deadly sins: pride, envy, greed, hatred, selfishness, laziness, and injustice. The wizard explains that this has been like his job for a very long time, and it's about the time that he needs a replacement. And so he bestows the powers of Shazam into Billy Batson.
Say it. Billy, just say the goddamn word. And he just yells it out. But like, how creepy is it? He's kind of like grooming him, dude. And he's just like, "You'll do nicely." And it's like, "Okay, bro, take a seat. Chill out." Dude, you're an old guy talking to a child like that on a weird floating rock. Don't do it. Bad luck.
Bad luck.
But Billy just like looks at him, and he's like, "Who is this?" And he just gets on his knees, and he's like, "Are you God?"
Right. I'm a wizard, Harry.
But it's crazy. So he gets the powers, which I like. And this is what what I like the most. So this is a characterization that is lost today, partially due to the movie, partially due to one misstep I would actually credit to Jeff Johns around Flashpoint, because, you know, I love Jeff Johns. I usually am like, can do no wrong, but I don't like the fact that Billy has his mindset when he is Captain Marvel. I like that in this story, they're pretty much separate entities that share a body together. Captain Marvel still has his own memories. Granted, he's lost some of them, but he still has that wisdom. He's a stand-up guy. He's willing to do what's right. He's courageous, and he's damn near indestructible. And I like that there's two sides of this character. Instead of it being Billy all the time trying to navigate as a hero, I like the fact that he can navigate as a hero as a young boy, but he can also have the capability to get things done by turning into Captain Marvel.
I think making that distinction made the character more vulnerable, but more realistic too. Later on in the series, there's this scene where Tawny's saying, "Don't go in combat. That's exactly what the enemy wants you to do." And he acts as Billy Batson instead of Shazam. And so he goes right into the fire. He made himself very vulnerable in that situation. And there's like a lot of debates between Shazam and Superman because they're very identical in power, except for Superman's weakness is magic and kryptonite, and Shazam is magic, right? So theoretically, Shazam should be a lot stronger. But when you saw that vulnerable side of Billy in this comic book, or Shazam, it made a lot more sense as to why he's not the leader of the Justice League, but that made me like the character even more.
I like that you're reading this story because I've known you a while and you respect Shazam, but you don't really read Shazam. And I'm glad that we finally got around to doing this story because now you can kind of see why I'm in a way like infatuated with the character. Like he's my favorite of all time. We've already been over that, but there's just something to it. And it's just the goofiness of the stories too.
Exactly. Even in the first issue, it's very fun and very wholesome. There's this guy who's running a hot dog stand. That shit's so silly, man. Billy's running away from that homeless dude that keeps trying to take his money, or crook. I'm not sure if he's homeless, but Billy runs into the Billy runs to the hot dog stand. He's like, "Can I buy a hot dog from you?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." The guy hooks up the hot dog, and Billy's already gone. And the guy chasing after him is like, "Where'd he go? Where'd he go?" And then Shazam comes and puts the fear of God in him. The guy starts booking it, and Shazam takes the hot dog that Billy ordered. And the hot dog man replies, "You protect kids for hot dogs?" So it's just kind of like that simplicity. They're not like fighting these like intergalactic wars. It's a little more relatable than that. It's set in Fawcett City, but it could be like any big downtown. It was just a fun read.
Yeah, dude. And just like that, I'm always fighting over hot dogs too. I mean, can't help that. But I love the he just comes up and he's like, "Yeah, do you protect kids for hot dogs?" He's just like, "No, I just like hot dogs." So it's like, what was the point of including the whole hot dog bit other than he comes in and he's like, "Man, I've been away for a while, but civilization's really advanced." And he's holding a hot dog and he's just like, "This is peak civilization." It's, yeah, dude, same.
Right, mustard and onion on a hot dog. Don't get better than that.
What's for breakfast? It's so cool. There's always stakes involved, whether it's goofy and silly and, you know, there's like lighthearted moments all the time, but there's still like a large scale to his stories at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Like when Shazam and the Wizard are talking about Billy and like why they chose him as the representative, they said something to the effect of, "This is no way for a kid to live, and no friends his own age, and he has no family to take care of him." At this point in the comics, he doesn't even know that he has a sister. And basically, this wizard and everybody else just wants the best for him because, like you said, he's got a heart of gold.
And you know, about the Wizard, I totally forgot to even mention this. How about all the fucking hilarious bits with the Wizard? Like, when he's like selecting Billy and he's like, "Say it, just say it, bro." And then he finally does. He's sitting under a giant rock and he lets the like rope snap and just crush him. And like, like fast forward through all the hot dog bits and like the scaring off the crackhead dude. And then they come back to the Rock of Eternity. The Rock is still sitting right on the throne, and you can just see his legs are bone, and he's got slippers on still, just chilling there until they light the torch, and he comes back as like a Force ghost, like he's like Luke Skywalker, Yoda or something. But yeah, as you were saying as well, he finds out he does have a sister. So this part I find cool because obviously I'm a big Mary Marvel fan, but I also find it weird. I don't know if it's just the art or if it's the fact that Mary is so much younger than Billy or doesn't get older when she transforms. She's literally like a flying 8-year-old. That's a little weird, but I mean, I get it. Like, it makes sense. It's not a real critique, but it's just like not what I'm used to. Glad that we got Mary Marvel involved because Mary kicks so much ass.
It was a great origin to the characters or the cast of Shazam. And if you don't know anything about the character, you basically get an introduction to his origin story in the first issue, and you get an introduction or at least the frameworks of what his villains are supposed to look like, because at the end of the issue, after talking to the wizard, he wakes back up, goes downtown, he's being chased again, but goes to some kind of circus, and there's like alligator people who are after children.
Yeah, dude, the alligator men kick ass. Technically, in like the Golden Age, I believe they're crocodile men. There's a difference. Look at their snout. But I still...
The one you feed marshmallows, the one you don't.
I go feed that gator marshmallow. Take them on a windboat tour, and you see these gators popping out in full ass suits, looking fly as hell. So I'm like, damn, these boys drippy. But I'm like, I love that. In the Golden Age, they had names. Unfortunately, they didn't give them names here. But my boy Herkimer, they're actually aliens from space. They're not actually just random gators. But I really love how dastardly these gators are. They're always saying some bullshit, and they're like, "Quick, we're losing. Time to eat the children." It's like. they acknowledge defeat. They're like, quick, just eat the damn kids.
Right. And then they're always trying to eat Shazam, and they're breaking their teeth on him.
I know, dude. He's like clocking them left and right. They just keep coming back. And the best part is, too, when he first runs into them when they're out in like the park and he's like flying away with them, they're still talking mad shit after he just whooped them, too. They're like, Mr. Mind's gonna kill you. And he's just like, shut up.
Yeah, it was a really cool. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, dude, I ride for the Gator Men. So past that, and we start seeing him wake up and like shit's really hitting the fan. There's way more villains and like monsters popping up. And guess who we finally meet? His OG villain, Dr. Sivana, who's the Attorney General. You know the story takes place in 2020 because he's almost like Jeff Sessions. Sweet. He's talking about, yeah, if we let the terrorists win, they'll take our whole lifestyle. So go out there and spend some money. And I'm like, yeah, dude, 2020.
Another cool thing while that's going on too, and we get introduced to one of his main villains, Talkie Tawny pulls up. He's introduced as a tiger, and he's at this circus, and Shazam's just basically fleeing from the alligator people,
Gator boys,
the Gator boys, and he says, "Is this a private fight, or can anyone join?"
I love that. Like, he also reveals himself to actually be old Talkie Tawny, the old homeless man, but
he's sitting by him by the dumpster fire.
But he's an Ifrit, so he's like a spirit that can transform between animal and human forms. I do dig that. That's not traditional Tawny, but that's still cool Tawny. That's something they actually kind of used in the New 52. I think Jeff Johns read that and he's like, yeah, good idea. You know what? I actually don't know which came first, so excuse me. But usually Talkie Tawny's just a regular anthropomorphic tiger who wears a business suit and just walks around jiving and shit. So I mean, he introduces himself more as like a tiger and kind of explains to Billy why he can transform and stuff like that. And he says the magic word, says Shazam, gets hit by the bolt of lightning, but Mary's right next to him, gets fucking zapped and launched into a car. And I was like, oh, no way.
That's the end of Mary.
And then she like gets up out of the car in the suit and she's like, sorry, Billy. And it's like, what? And she starts like flying around and she has the powers. Like, sweet. I wasn't expecting that turn to happen so fast since it was only like the second issue, but that was awesome.
Do you like that she's younger in these comics?
As I kind of mentioned before, I still think it's a little bizarre. In this, I mean, she should be around the same age, maybe a little younger. I do like that they mentioned she was Mary Bromfeld because Billy didn't always know he had a sister, which they did show in this. And then she finds out that she is Mary Batson. But usually like in the books now, I actually kind of like the take that she's a little older than Billy. I feel like she kind of has more of that mature instinct, I suppose. So I kind of like the take that she's seen as a little bit older. Back in the Golden Age, she was a little bit younger. I mean, overall, there's not really a take of Mary Marvel I don't like. I'm just more accustomed to the traditional one, but I'm more of a comic purist, old man, get off my lawn type when it comes to most characters. So cool with it, but like, it's not what I'm used to, but it doesn't annoy me at all.
Even though she was younger, I like that they still gave her those mature qualities that you were mentioning. Like, she already knew how to fly, which Billy Batson, I don't think, knew how to do at that point, even though she got introduced to her powers a little later than Billy. So it just instinctively, it looked like she knew how to, she was already like in better control of her powers than Billy.
I think Billy had a good grasp because he was kind of a separate entity, but Mary was still kind of herself. So I guess in that facet, yes. But yeah, I think it was pretty good. That and the fact that she was like really intuitive when it came to investigating the machines, the creatures. She kind of knew that they weren't living beings. She could fly really fast. She was faster than Billy. She had a different power set that were like driven from Athena. So she has kind of a varying power set based on more like female gods or like goddesses, stuff like that. So I do like that take too. It kept a lot of the same basic characteristics there, but just kind of tweaked them for this story.
Did you like their take on Dr. Sivana?
Dr. Sivana, kinda, because I mean, he's still the same dude. He's not so much, I'm an evil scientist and I hate Billy Batson. He's kind of, you know, he's in charge of like a giant government agency, but I mean, he's still the same bastard he's always been. He's always cunning. He's always backstabbing. He's always trying to get whatever type of gain he can out of it. Generally power. In this, it was more about money. So I guess they're really critiquing, you know, government and selling weapons and stuff, like how he dealt with Mr. Mind and yippity doo dah. But at the end of the day, he's still trying to backstab and deceive and, you know, put things at risk in order to have personal gain.
He was kind of in agreement with Mr. Mind in the beginning. He was wanting to work with him. And then he's at the point where he got Mary Marvel completely tied up. She can't access her superpowers because her mouth is completely sealed. And there's this throne at the very top of a robot that he was thinking he was supposed to sit in. But at that point, Mr. Mind had no use for Sivana. And he's like, well, you might as well throw yourself off this robot. Despite him, he's just like, fuck you. And he throws this 8-year-old child off to fall to her death. You can definitely see that he was a very spiteful villain.
Bro, that interaction had me cracking up. He says, throw yourself off. And then he immediately comes back and he says, get bent.
He does say that too. Oh,
it's
what
hilarious.
a cool interaction in comic books.
Dude, I know.
Go kill yourself. No, go get bent.
Fucking pound sand, you worm.
Right.
Dude, how about the balls that Billy grew to go walk into that giant creature robot thingamabob without being Captain Marvel? This is a young kid running in there, crawling through all bunch of dumpy stuff in a giant weird tunnel, trying to save his sister, and he's getting swallowed up by roaches. And
well,
it's
he's used to
like,
hanging out on the streets. So I actually thought that was kind of a cool origin story for him because that robot was no problem. It was probably a little cleaner than his house.
That's fucked up. But how about how like the roaches and ants are like, let's spare him.
They're like, hey, this dude was actually trying to avoid stepping on us before. I know Mr. Mind wants us to suffocate him by like completely smothering him, but you know, we could take it easy on Billy. Billy's cool.
I know, dude. Roach God. But it's like But here's my one gripe, and this is me being old man yelling at Cloud again. They show Mr. Mind's face on the TV, and then they also show Mr. Mind in actual form. But he looks like a giant-ass dumb snake with weird sharp teeth and a facetious-looking face and no damn glasses. And I says, this ain't my Mr. Mind. I want that tiny caterpillar, the little goofy talk box around his neck, some big thick frame glasses, and like a little cheesy smile from the 40s. He was so unassuming. It's just the contrast between how he was portrayed back in the 40s and 50s. He was literally the cutest, tiniest little worm, but he was a damn Nazi. Dude, there's literally a panel of him wearing Nazi regalia. He teams up with Captain Nazi. He literally hangs out with the worst people. And it's just the contrast of him being a cute little worm. And he's also the mastermind behind this. He has no physical chops whatsoever. He is not imposing. He's just a genius. I like that. When you start giving him big big sharp teeth and trying to make him look more imposing, it kind of takes the like cut of the character out. It's like, oh, so now we're supposed to be scared by this worm with sharp teeth? No, I like the fact that it was goofy, but he was still pure hatred.
That was probably one part of Shazam's origins that they really didn't need to tamper with or edit, because I don't know that they really gained anything by making him look more villainous, because to your point, he was very unassuming.
Yes, and that's the thing too. I do like the fact that he was still unassuming in a way, because kind of when he was introduced back in Captain Marvel Adventures 22, way back in the day, just as a cameo, that was his voice. So there was like issues and issues leading up to him actually appearing. So in issue 22, he's literally just a voice that Billy hears. He assumes that he's like just this giant, grandiose, like evil villain. And then there's issue 26 where he flicks an unassuming little green worm off his shoulder. He brushed his shoulders off. And he's just like, what is that? It's just a little worm. And that worm's got a pissed off look on its face. But then later on, we find out that that damn little worm is the mastermind villain. I don't know. They did the same thing here. Like they teased it until he did show himself on the screen. But I do like that at least his characterization was on point. So me yelling about him being not looking how I like him to look is one thing, but they did at least follow through with his character. He's an evil mastermind worm. He is always 3 steps ahead. He's always trying to cut a deal and like take advantage of another villain. He's like the granddaddy. He knows what he's doing. And you assume he's the biggest villain. I think they did him right in that regard, at least.
I really like how they followed through with the story too. At the end of the story, Billy Batson defeats these robots, defeats Mr. Mime, and then Billy Batson says Shazam. He's back to Billy, and he's staring down Dr. Savannah, who caused all this mess, and he looks him in the eyes, and he really can, because they're the same size, even though Billy's 12. And he says, I don't need powers to thump you. And he rolls up his sleeve and starts kicking his ass. It was a good old short people fight. And it's funny because Billy's a kid and Savannah's an adult.
It was funny though. I was just like, dude, after all of this, you're getting beat up by a child.
Yeah, and then there's a cool old Wiz reference at the end of the comic, and then the dust settles. He gets a job with the reporting company, which is SNN instead of CNN.
Radio Wiz. So I like that they did give him his job, because that is the job he's had the entirety of the Golden Age too. He was a radio reporter for Radio Wiz. So I do like that they tied that in at the very end, and he kind of does get his family. So it's kind of like a pre-origin, takes a little bit of different order compared to the original content, the original continuity. But I do like that ultimately all of the key facets of his life have pretty much been introduced, and that he does get his job, because that's kind of how he stays afloat, like during the Golden Age as a single child.
To sum it up, it was very playful. It was funny, but it wasn't too goofy. It was a great origin story for him and easy to understand. There was actually a lot of pages. It was spread between 4 issues, but the issues go by pretty quick just because how enjoyable the characters are and the cast is. I like that it gave Silver Age vibes with a little bit of a modern spin to it, because it came out in the late 2000s. Definitely recommend it myself, especially if you want to know more about Shazam, and if you're new to comics, it's a great place to start.
I agree with that. I'd say, yeah, if you're interested in the character Shazam, maybe you saw the movie, or you just want to read something lighthearted, it is actually a good amount of reading for only being 4 issues, like Joe just said. If you want to get a taste of the character and you don't feel like reading something from the 40s or the issues from the 70s, because he really hasn't had that many sustained runs since the Golden Age, this is a good teaser of a story to get you invested in the character.
Smith nailed it.
Overall, what would you rate it?
8 out of 10 boobs, because I don't see it ever being critically acclaimed, but even compared to what we read, I enjoyed it more than reading Crisis. And I've never read Bone before, but I'm definitely interested in reading more of whatever this guy writes moving forward. Like you said, I've always been a fan of Shazam, but I've never really read Shazam or respected him in that regard, and now I have a whole new outlook on the character.
I'm definitely glad that you took that away from it. I'm going to go actually a tad lower. Well, just a half step. I'll say 7.5 out of 10. I liked everything. This is kind of a sliding scale for me, because the more things we're going to review, it's going to be hard for me to keep up with what's better than what. But but I'd say it's a good read. I guess I've just read a good amount of Shazam. I personally enjoy the other stuff a little bit more. I thought this was a good story. The only thing that was a knock for me is I think it was appropriate for the story, but the art, I didn't like it as much as I would want to. I get why. It kind of lends itself to the story, but that's just a personal preference. There were certain like panels and stuff that I just didn't like. I can't really give you too much more than that. I guess just a disheveled look of Billy. I get that he's supposed to be disheveled, but in a certain way, like he looked older in certain panels. He looked a little odd to me, but I think overall the story is the strong point for me. I think the story is told very well. The only reason I really am knocking it is because of some art and design choices, but that's nothing major. Granted, it is a visual medium, but that's just a personal taste. You may like it, but it's also really easy to hand to a kid who's really interested in beginning to read comics, or if you're an adult, it's pretty much suitable for all ages.
100%. The only thing I wanted to see is Black Adam.
I don't know how he would really fit in the story, but yeah, I'm always down for a good Black Adam story. He's one of my favorite villains.
If they were to do something like some kind of continuation of the story or a sequel to it,
or a movie.
Yep, that's where I'm getting at. The Rock is definitely going to play Black Adam, and I can't think of a better person to play him. I mean, he actually looks the part.
Yes.
He's always been the size of the part.
Bigger.
Exactly. He's going to nail it. Your thoughts?
I didn't know that Black Adam ate so much cod, but no, it's sweet, dude. Fast and Furious Black Adam's going to kick so much ass. He's going to be driving a Mustang up the pyramids. I don't know. It's going to be pretty cool. The only thing better is why don't we get some more wrestlers involved? I'm just kidding. But no, The Rock is sweet. I mean, The Rock is always playing The Rock.
We could get Batista involved.
Nah, I'm good, dude. But no, The Rock is The Rock, and The Rock is sweet. Rock for president. But anyways, so he plays himself in a majority of the movies he's in, and that's not necessarily who Black Adam is. But I think that because The Rock is The Rock in every movie, there's going to be a certain level of badassery in action, which is necessary, and there's going to be a whole lot of corn, and we need corn in a Shazam or Black Adam movie. I think that this movie is going to kind of take us back in time, kind of like when they showed that little prophecy in the beginning of the Shazam movie when Billy sees the old champion, Black Adam is referenced. I think that we're going to get a movie taken in Kahndaq back in the day when he was the champion of the Wizards. So I think it's going to show us how he was the champion and kind of his fall from grace into more of a villain, in this case maybe an anti-hero. But I think that that's kind of the scope of the story that they're going to give us. At least I hope so. If they do it in the modern age, I don't know what they're going to do right away. What do you think?
I don't know how they're going to tell the story, but I would like to see his conflict with the Wizard.
There's a little bit of news tied to that we have to go over as well. So Noah Centineo, I'm not really familiar with him. I think girls on Tumblr think he's cute. I don't know who he is though. So I hear like those fandom stands and stuff like that on Twitter, like, oh my God, he's so great. He's the white boy of the month. But it's like, whatever. This dude got casted to be the Atom Smasher. So I want to see how that ties in, because that's actually coming back from like a 90s era story. So if you don't know Atom Smasher, I don't blame you. Most people really don't. So he's formerly known as Nuklon. He was part of the team that reformed the Justice Society in the 90s. He has like a normal super strength kind of power set, durability, you know, the general stuff. But his special power is that he can use atomic dispersal to grow in size, I think up to like 28 feet. So dude gets huge, roids out, and he just whoops people. He is part of that reformed Justice Society, which is because he's the godson of the original Atom, Al Pratt. So he's kind of taking over the mantle in a way. So that's really how that character ties in. I'm not entirely familiar with the storyline. I do know that Black Adam tries to entangle himself with the reformed Justice Society at that point in time, but I really couldn't say much past that. So I'd like to see how they get him involved in this movie, and hopefully he works out, because I don't really know his acting chops. And then the only other thing I want to touch on is Shazam 2, because Black Adam is coming shortly before Shazam 2, and as much as I want to see Black Adam, I want to see Shazam 2. I'm just speculating here. I mean, obviously we saw the post-credit teaser, Mr. Mind, voiced by the director, which I actually loved. The talk box voice, perfect. Tiny little caterpillar, amazing. So I'm loving that. So we know he's getting involved in the sequel. I saw him talking to Savannah, and that leads me to believe these two always team up together, and that's a bad time. So that leads me to believe that Shazam 2 is going to be involving the Monster Society of Evil based off of what we just read. Do I know if the Crocodile Men are going to be circled back upon from their cameo in the first movie?
I sure hope so.
Dude, me too. Pimped out gator suit. But other than that, I have a hunch that they're going to introduce my boy, Mr. Adam. And that's what I want to see, because Dr. Savannah's smart. He's got the magic, which he doesn't have in the Golden Age, but he does have in the modern continuity through DC, which I'm iffy on, but it is what it is. But they're going to team up. I'm sure Mr. Adam is going to get built or found or assembled in some way, shape, or form. And we're going to see Shazam fight a big ass robot. So that would be sweet. Other than that, I'm not really sure what else they have planned for us, because I hear it's supposed to be a trilogy. And that's where I'm sure Black Adam and Shazam are going to meet up and eventually duke it out.
I don't think they would release like a solo Black Adam movie if they weren't planning to tie Black Adam with Shazam eventually. And because we know that he's not going to be the main villain in the second movie, and that they're going to get a trilogy because the first movie was so good, probably that or Wonder Woman was the best DC movie to come out so far, he's definitely going to link back up with Shazam for the third movie. I would be very surprised if they didn't.
I would love if homeboy Henry Cavill comes back and they can do
Shazam and Superman versus Black Adam, because that's honestly what it would take. We don't see a lot of Black Adam versus Superman. We often, if anything, compare Shazam to Superman, but I'm pretty confident that Superman could take Shazam. I think it's a closer fight if Black Adam were to fight Superman.
Well, I'll give you that in modern continuity. If we're going to base power sets, like, well, let's say the most powerful Superman outside of All-Star Superman is Silver Age Superman versus Golden Age Shazam, it's going to be pretty damn close. Mm-hmm. I'd say maybe Superman's got a little bit more strength. He's probably going to hit that much harder, but I think that Shazam's a little bit quicker. But I think the way they nerfed him, because they can't let their cash cow Superman get upshown by the dude that they acquired in the 70s, they nerf Billy a little bit, which I don't like. And they need to put some respect on him, but they're not going to, because Superman's first, Superman's the OG. But
that and Shazam has the power of Hercules. In my opinion, Superman's a little stronger than Hercules.
You don't know, dude.
I don't know that.
Yeah, but he also knows magic, dude. Zap his ass with the thunder. He's got the power of Zeus.
But to my point earlier, in this story retold, he's kind of Billy and Shazam are separate, and so sometimes he kind of acts out of immaturity.
That shouldn't happen, though. Because they're separate, he should be, cooler heads should prevail. But you know what? Even in the Golden Age, you do that too. If he flirted with a chick, he'd get a little nervous. He'd start blushing. So it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of Billy in there. But that wisdom of Solomon, but also the dude has the stamina of Atlas, the dude who holds up the entire world. So it's like, he can go all day, bro.
Mood.
But yeah, sucks for him. Sometimes you just want to roll over. But anyways.
Right.
But yeah, no, to your point, I mean, other like powerhouse characters aside from Shazam and Superman, Black Adam's up there along with like the likes of Martian Manhunter. There's a few powerhouses that are all just like half steps around each other. Like, it's kind of hard to say who's the strongest at any given time, because it does depend on the writer. But it's like a one-on-one, like even the interactions we've seen in Doomsday Clock where Superman and Black Adam are kind of beefing, he does not back down.
To conclude, I really enjoyed the story. It was a very easy read, very entertaining. So if you're new to comics, it's a great first pickup, especially if you want to know more about Shazam. Next week, we will be reviewing Kraven's Last Hunt. I'm very excited about that. His first appearance is in Amazing Spider-Man 15. It's also the first mention of Mary Jane Watson. It's one of my favorite keys, and it's supposed to be maybe the most iconic run in Spider-Man, because we've reviewed so many DC stories. I want to kick it back to Marvel. Last time we did an event comic, so I want to bring it back to the Amazing Spider-Man and start with Kraven's Last Hunt.
Before we let you go this week, just want to let you know a couple reminders here. Make sure to check us out on YouTube at CBJpod. Make sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram, also at CBJpod. You can follow us on Facebook at CBJ Podcast. You can follow me personally on Instagram at Andrew_Burger, BURGER, and you can follow Joe at JZonka95.
There it is, folks.
That's all we got for you this week, guys, so take it easy.